Many times when an author is writing his story, he may change his mind about something he plans to do with the characters or with the world, and then he just changes course during the story itself without much planning beforehand. Sometimes you just get a very new, interesting idea that you didn't think about before, and other times you just think about another concept and change something entirely that you had planned to be something else, aka a retcon, retroactive continuity. There are several retcons in the Naruto series, but today we're going to talk about a very specific and interesting one that not many people really think about, which is going to be the Rinnegan retcon. It's a bit of a weird one because there isn't a lot of information out there, but it's very easy to infer a couple of things that happened to the Rinnegan in the story and to the entire concept of the eye, and how Kishimoto changed it over time to suit the narrative he was trying to tell. Many people overlook this, but the first time we actually see the Rinnegan is before the time skip, or should I say the proto-Rinnegan, because it's not the design we're used to, but it's definitely the Rinnegan. After Naruto and Sasuke have their fight in the Valley of the End, the Akatsuki assembles after many years in the hologram forms that they usually take when they are talking over great distances, and we do see the leaders speaking to them. Obviously, with hindsight, we know that's Pain/Nagato, but we do see back in the day the Rinnegan, which looks quite different. First of all, the entire pattern of the eye is different. It is still like rounded with those weird orbs inside of it, but it's not the same. And also the color is different. It's not the purplish magenta color, it's white and gray. And if I'm being honest with you, that eye didn't exactly look like the most powerful doujutsu in the universe. It almost looks like just a quirky eye that a character would have that it would otherwise not be impactful. Think about this for a second. There's several characters with really quirky, weird looking eyes that are not doujutsu related eyes. Kakuzu, Kurenai, Kisame. They're characters with a different design for the eyes than the norm, but it doesn't mean they have a doujutsu. And the same thing can almost be said about the first glimpse we have of the Rinnegan. Oh, it's just like a quirky little eye for the guy of the Akatsuki. It doesn't really have to be a doujutsu, really. Because the two other doujutsus that we had experience with were the Sharingan, which obviously is very distinctive, and an eye that's important, a powerful jutsu. The shape of a Sharingan and also the Mangekyo Sharingan is different from anything else we've seen before, and it's completely different from a slightly quirkier eye. We also saw the Byakugan, which has all those veins around the eyes when you're using the jutsu. So yeah, this is definitely a jutsu as well, but that proto-Rinnegan, not so much. Now there's a chance that Kishimoto never really intended that eye to be a doujutsu at all, just, as I said before, a quirky design of the leader of the Akatsuki. But this is just a big assumption. We can also assume that Kishimoto had something planned for the Rinnegan, but not exactly what it ended up being. Or that Kishimoto didn't really have anything planned for the Rinnegan, but he just put a cool looking eye for the leader of the Akatsuki so that he could develop powers for it later. And this trend of us not really knowing what the Rinnegan is, and the Rinnegan having that weird design that we're not used to, continues even after the time skip. During the Kazekage rescue mission, the leader still has the weird Rinnegan design. It's only in the Akatsuki suppression arc, midway through Naruto Shippuden, that we actually first see the Rinnegan design we know, which, let's be real here, is much more interesting than the first design that we got. And this design remains the same design for the Rinnegan until the end of the series. I mean, later on, we do get the additional Tomoe in the Rinnegan here and there, but still, it's the same principle. It's just a little bit more powerful and you have the Tomoe. Or a lot more powerful, but you know what I mean. So what's possible to infer here is that Kishimoto didn't really know exactly who the leader of the Akatsuki was going to be, what the Rinnegan was gonna be, what their powers were gonna be like, or anything like that before the Akatsuki suppression arc, or somewhere around that. He didn't even have those things planned out in the Kazekage rescue mission. He only had the broad strokes. So you may be saying, well, this is not exactly a retcon. Just because you had a new idea while you're writing the story, it doesn't mean you have to retroactively change things that you've established before. But actually, there's already a bit of a retcon here, which is the appearance of the Rinnegan. Some people may even argue, oh, it's because Nagato had a different Rinnegan before the Akatsuki suppression arc. But no, we see Nagato in the flashback of Jiraiya, and also in Nagato's own flashback, and the Rinnegan, ever since he was a kid, was already the shape that was introduced midway through Naruto Shippuden. So obviously, the appearance change of the Rinnegan was a retcon. But like, to be honest, this is not a big deal at all. It's just a little small change in the appearance. It's not very relevant to the story. The real big retcon and change was what the Rinnegan is. Now, first, when we see Jiraiya's flashback and he sees Nagato's Rinnegan, he kind of recognizes it and says, oh, okay, this is the power of the Sage of Six Paths, the legendary Doujutsu of the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan itself is a legend in the shinobi world. People know about it, but nobody really believed it was real. That's why when Nagato got the Rinnegan, this was such a big deal. Okay, he is the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths. He's gonna save the world or destroy it. And it's during the Pain arc, you know, the arc where Nagato is the main character almost, where we get introduced to the legend of the Sage of Six Paths, the most powerful person that's ever existed, the man who created the moon. And he had the Rinnegan eyes. And obviously by that point of the story, we didn't know a lot about the Sage of Six Paths. Obviously, Kishimoto didn't intend Hagoromo to be a half alien. This was a retcon that came later because Shonen Jump forced him to introduce Kage so that Boruto could have stupid villains. But the point is that when the Rinnegan was introduced via Pain, we had no particular inclination to think that, oh, this is an evolution of the Sharingan. It really looks like, you know, a more powerful version of it. The Rinnegan felt completely different from the Sharingan and even the Byakugan. We all thought back in the day that the Rinnegan was a third Doujutsu entirely, not an evolution of the Sharingan, which we obviously learned during the war arc. More specifically, when Madara Uchiha is revived and starts to fight the Alliance, Kabuto talks to him and says, oh yes, as I suspected, the natural evolution of the Sharingan is the Byakugan. And this is a shocking revelation because we had no idea about it. The fandom really wanted to know more about the Rinnegan, and when Kabuto says it's the evolution of the Sharingan, it answers a lot of questions, but it also raises many more. What do you mean evolution of the Sharingan? How come more people didn't have the Rinnegan before? And also, like, what do you mean? I mean, the Rinnegan doesn't look anything like the Sharingan, which, yeah, it's because Kishimoto didn't intend that to be the case when he first conceptualized the concept of the Rinnegan when he was developing Pain and Nagato for the Pain arc. If you look at the abilities of the Six Paths of Pain and even the outer path with the Rinne Tensei, they are completely different and feel unlike any other Doujutsu that we'd ever seen. Any other Mangekyo Sharingan, any Byakugan or Sharingan or whatever, nothing really felt like it was similar to the Rinnegan whatsoever, to its abilities, because they were very quirky, different, and exotic. That's one of the reasons why it was so difficult to deal with Pain, because all of those weird abilities, like Jiraiya had never seen them before, he had no clue how to fight them in the first place. Like, think about this for a second. Pretend you're, I don't know, Itachi Uchiha, okay? You awaken your Sharingan, you have precog, you can copy jutsus, you then evolve your Sharingan until the third Tomoe, and eventually awaken your Mangekyo Sharingan. Now, Itachi, for example, gained two extremely powerful abilities, Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi, the most powerful ninjutsu and the most powerful genjutsu according to Zetsu. And yeah, these are very cool abilities. You also gain access to Susanoo, this massive humanoid that protects you, it can also attack. But then pretend for some reason that Itachi manages to get the EMS, and then he awakens the Rinnegan by implanting some Hashirama cells or whatever. I mean, we know this is impossible because you have to be a reincarnation of Indra to awaken the Rinnegan, but bear with me for a second here. Itachi gets the Rinnegan, and all of a sudden he has access to like 6 basic abilities, plus an original one if you are the original Awakener, plus the shared field of view if you get the 6 paths and corpses and whatnot. So first you have the ability to tell your opponent's movements, copy jutsus, and then Itachi gets the ability to shoot dark flames and cast a very powerful genjutsu, but then all of a sudden with the Rinnegan, you have the ability to sprout out mechanical limbs and shoot laser beams out of your head. This really seems weird, doesn't it? Like, it doesn't fit at all with what the Sharingan was trying to be, even the Mangekyo Sharingan. Yes, Mangekyo Sharingan abilities can be extremely different from each other. I mean, just take a look at what Obito can do with his Mangekyo and what Itachi can do. Like, they're completely different set of skills. But what the Rinnegan can do is even weirder. It feels like Kishimoto developed the Rinnegan and its abilities specially for Nagato, this particular character, and that he only thought about the connection between the Sage of Six Paths and the Uchiha clan a little bit later. Another clue that we have is that the pattern and the design of the Rinnegan is completely different from the Sharingan and the Mangekyo Sharingan, any Mangekyo for that matter. All things considered, the Rinnegan's design is rather simple, while the Mangekyo Sharingan can be pretty complex. Also, the Sharingan is red, the Rinnegan is purple, like it doesn't really have a lot of connection there. Now yes, you could argue Kishimoto was trying to hide a particular aspect, the Rinnegan was an evolution of the Sharingan, but still, he could have left a couple of hints here and there in the design. That's why it's always felt that the Rinnegan was a third Doujutsu entirely and not an evolution before we found out the truth with Kabuto. Now, we could see the implementation of this retcon in the story during the 5 Kage Summit arc when Obito explains the backstory of the Sage of Six Paths, that he had 2 children, Indra, who inherited his eyesight, and Ashura, who inherited his physical prowess, the descendants of which became the Uchiha and the Senju clans. And because we knew that the Sage of Six Paths had a Rinnegan, I mean, we literally see the Rinnegan in the flashback that Obito talks about, and it's not exactly a flashback, it's more of an artistic reinterpretation of what happened, but he has the Rinnegan, and therefore we see a direct connection between the Rinnegan and the Uchiha clan. So with that context, we could have inferred that, oh, so the Rinnegan is definitely related to the Sharingan, because if the Uchihas are the descendants of the Sage of Six Paths, the ones who inherited the eyesight of the Sage, then, well, it's possible that the Rinnegan is the final evolution of the Sharingan. We even see in that flashback that Indra's Mangekyo Sharingan, or maybe that's his base Sharingan, we don't know, is almost like a fusion between the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. It's like the shape of a Sharingan in red, however, it's all swirly like a Rinnegan. An interesting transition for sure. Obviously, the filler episodes in the anime completely screw that up and just gave Indra Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan, which is absolutely stupid. But in the 5 Kage Summit, this was implemented. We now see, oh, okay, there's a direct relationship between the Uchihas and the Sage of Six Paths. And this is around the time where many retcons were also implemented. The Senju clan being much more important, Hashirama and Madara being the strongest beings in the verse after the Sage of Six Paths. All those things were changed around that time in the story. Now, are these changes good or bad? Many people really dislike this because they say that Rinnegan shouldn't be an Uchiha thing because the Uchihas have already too much screen time in the story and they occupy too much space. But the introduction of the children of the Sage of Six Paths and the clans they sprouted out that became 2 infamous clans that warred over domination during the Warring States period and everything like that is one of the most interesting aspects of the Naruto story. The parallels you can draw upon Madara, Hashirama, Naruto, and Sasuke are insane, and also Madara and Hashirama being those extremely powerful demigod shinobi is something worth of noting in the lore of the verse. It gives them this different feel, this different status. These guys from the past, they were different. There was something else about them. And also the way Kishimoto went about explaining how an Uchiha could awaken the Rinnegan is very interesting. You must combine both the chakra of Indra and Ashura, both of their reincarnations. You need chakra from them specifically, so you have to be a reincarnation of Indra that has awakened the EMS, and also get chakra from a reincarnation of Ashura. Now, I don't enjoy the reincarnation thing specifically. I think that if you had an EMS and you got chakra from a Senju, enough chakra that is, then you should be able to awaken the Rinnegan, but still, this is how Kishimoto went about things, and not everything's perfect. And we also see that even if you get the chakra that you need from the Ashura reincarnation, you're still going to awaken the Rinnegan only at the brink of death. This is exactly what happens to Madara. He only does so when he is extremely old and almost dead, and Sasuke only awakens the Rinnegan when he is literally dying from a stab wound to the heart. But it does give you this interesting piece of lore that, okay, Indra may have inherited the eyesight of the Sage of Six Paths and his ocular prowess, however, he hasn't inherited everything. You still need the other bit, the Ashura part, to completely awaken what the Sage of Six Paths once had, the Rinnegan. It's also very interesting what Madara had to do to awaken the Rinnegan. He had to get Hashirama's flesh, he had to do all those crazy things, and because he was going to die right after he awakened it, he had to put the Rinnegan in somebody else's eye sockets, Nagato, and there's just something ominous about raising this person so that he can one day sacrifice his life to bring you back from the dead using Rinne Tensei, which was Madara's plan. When Obito, posing as Madara, shows up to Konan and says, "Oh, you think Nagato is the savior and that he awakened the Rinnegan? You were completely wrong, because the Rinnegan is mine." I really like that concept. It gives an extremely intimidating air to Madara, quote unquote. And let's be real, if the Rinnegan was a third Doujutsu, it would still be a little weird. What would they do instead of it being an evolution of the Sharingan? Oh, okay, so all of a sudden, a random person is born with Rinnegan eyes. Like, is that the case? Like, once every 10,000 years somebody is born with those eyes? Do you have to fulfill a specific condition? Does anything have to do with your clan or anything? Because if it is so rare, then if this was a random thing that happened to Nagato, it wouldn't be as impactful. And if Nagato was from a specific clan that awakened the Rinnegan, then why did we never hear about this clan before? I mean, to be fair, we never heard about the Senju that much before, and they became very important, but still, it would be even worse with the Rinnegan here because it's way more impactful than just being a Senju. The problem that I have with this Rinnegan retcon is that because the powers of the Rinnegan are so inherently different from the powers of the Sharingan and the Mangekyo Sharingan and all that, the characters that awaken the Rinnegan after Nagato had the Rinnegan don't really use the powers of the Rinnegan that well. And that's one, because they would be way too overpowered, and two, because they don't fit aesthetically many times. Like, can you imagine, I don't know, Madara sprouting out mechanical limbs, shooting laser beams from the top of his head? I don't think it would look very good. Then the Naraka path is also very different looking. Even the human path is kind of too different. And let's be real, the human path is way too broken. So characters can't really use it. Otherwise, you have an insta-kill move at the tip of your fingers, which can lead to many problems in the narrative. But every time a character gets a Rinnegan after Nagato, it feels like they're not really using it to its most potential, unfortunately. I mean, we do get new abilities in Limbo and Ameno Teijikara, which are really powerful jutsus, especially Limbo. And Madara uses Chibaku Tensei and the Preta path a lot, but other than those things, I mean, he doesn't use it a whole lot. Sasuke also uses Chibaku Tensei and Ameno Teijikara a lot, but that's, you know, pretty much the only two Rinnegan abilities he uses. And all those things are minor issues, and if Kishimoto had actually put some thought into how to implement these abilities into the new characters Sasuke, Obito, and Madara, he could have pulled something off with them, but instead he goes through a more convenient route of kind of ignoring some of the Rinnegan abilities and just writing around them. So like most retcons, there are advantages and disadvantages for your story when you implement them. It's just a matter of balancing them out and seeing which one comes out on top. In this case, I believe that the Rinnegan being an evolution of the Sharingan would be better than the alternative, but I mean, we don't even know exactly what the alternative would have been, so it's just guesswork here, but I enjoy this concept of the Rinnegan being the final evolution of the Sharingan. Like this video to help me out with the algorithm, subscribe if you haven't done so already, please, this really helps me out, and also watch this other video right here for more cool Naruto content. Thank you so much for watching.